let's start here. Catholic schools all over the country are now explicitly teaching and establishing cultures of virtue on the school sites. But the recent article that this I was reading by the two of you brings in that neurobiology, and you quote, "Experience is the architect of the mind." And you discuss neuroplasticity. Let's catch our listeners up. Can you explain?
Dr. Villa, I'll let you go with that. Yes.
Yeah, I'll take that one on.
Yes.
So, what we discovered in the decade of the brain, that the brain is wiring and rewiring itself across the lifespan. And it's wiring itself in the context of attachment and relationships. But this capacity for neuroplasticity is greatest in childhood. I would say from 0 to 25. So the frontal cortex, which is the last to wire itself, is wired about the mid 20s. And so it really behooves us to get very intentional about how we're wiring children for mental health and for good and for virtue. And that's really what we're bringing into Catholic education, that Sister is trying to create these very intentional daily experiences that wire the idea of virtue into their very person so that they're equipped for wholeness and goodness when they arrive to their young adulthood.
Very nice.
Yes.
So go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. I was just gonna what I was gonna pull from that when we talk about virtue in a very simple definition of virtue that I often say is this habit of doing good. And, when we think about in Catholic education, we think about parents entrusting their children to a Catholic school. What is it? What is it they want? Their primary thing is they want their child to be raised in goodness. They want their child to be good, and also, and it's normal for any parent. They want others because that child is the most precious person, right? And they want
Absolutely.
other people to recognize and to see the goodness in their child. And so virtue gives us this beautiful language, vocabulary that we have, which is centuries old in our Catholic tradition, but even back to the time of the early philosophers. But it gives us this beautiful language that we can use in describing the goodness of one another, of the students, of our peers, and that naturally creates a very positive environment, a very positive culture. So if you take the example that Dr. Villa just gave about the neuroplasticity, is that if their child is gaining their experience and this culture and this environment, then the brain will be wired for goodness. And to me, that's a message that we need to be shouting from the rooftops everywhere, because we want this. We don't want them to be fragmented, which is what we're up against. We want this wholeness and this harmony and this peace, is which how God has created each one of them to be, had created each one of us to be. And I think that's just a very strong message that we want to kind of shout out there to people.
A great message and a great responsibility.